welcome to Scorched Earth. This is going to be a general reading for the sign of Cancer, Sun, Moon and Ascendant for the month of March. I'm starting all of these videos off with a bit of a sort of preemptive apology because we are in a Mercury retrograde at the moment, and it is in Pisces, which is cosmologically an energy that I just cannot deal with, despite having a Piscean daughter and 3 wonderful women that I count as friends, and I'm very blessed to do so, who are also Pisces. It's just something about the energy just sends me all broken. So if I trip over my words or, you know, that sort of thing, sorry. It's been happening a lot. And I hope that it's being a bit kinder to you than it is being to me anyway. I take Scorpio all day long over Pisces energy. So, I'm using the Crow Tarot today, because it's actually the second time I've started this video. But I started with the Llewellyn and I was like, oh, I need to use a different deck. So we're using the Crow, because that's the one that wanted to come out. So I'm going to stop waffling now and pull some cards. 3 cards for Cancer. Oh my god, it's doing exactly the same thing as it was doing with the Llewellyn deck. 3 cards for Cancer, please, for the month of March. Whoa. Okay, the first card we've got is the card of Aries in the Major Arcana, is the Emperor. It's interesting. I have 2 more cards for Cancer, please. Ooh. Got the 7 of Cups in your present energy, and for what's coming towards you in March. Coming towards Cancer in March. It's a 10 of Swords, but it didn't jump. It just kind of showed its face, so bear that in mind. 1 more card for Cancer, please. 3 of Swords. Okay. So it's quite possible that it did want to pop out there. We've got the 7 of Swords at the bottom of the deck. That's the shadow card. It's the theme for the reading. And the 7 of Swords talks about deception of some description. Now that can be at the hands of other people, or it could be you being deceptive to other people, or it could be you deceiving yourself. Right? No doubt we'll work out which ones of that it is. Oh, I swear. I'm not used to not being able to speak properly, and it's very discombobulating. I don't mind telling you that. So, let's get some clarifiers, and then we'll see what's what. So, why is the Emperor here for Cancer, please? Got the Knight of Wands. It's more fire energy. Where's the Emperor here? Got the 5 of Swords has dropped out, but I'm going to put it back in. Quite often that for me talks about a break in communication with someone. There it is. That slid out. Hanged Man. Now it's a card of Pisces, so that could be a timing thing, or it could be a person, or it could be an energy, but we'll have a look into it and see. Where's the 7? Apparently the 7 of Cups is here because King of Swords, and 6 of Wands. Okay, that's good. That's starting to look up. Why is the 3 of Swords here, please, for Cancer? Ace of Wands and the Queen of Swords. Okay, so that's a pair that we've got on the table there. At the bottom of the deck, we've got the Wheel of Fortune. Okay, so this is a teaching. Wheel of Fortune, the Magician and the Emperor. I feel like this is a month to learn a lesson about something, Cancer, and it may not be a comfortable one, but let's not prejudge, we'll get into it. So the first card you've got is the Emperor, right, and that's the card of Aries in the Major Arcana, and it's in your past energy. I'm drawn to the sword straight away. I imagine it's because of all the swords that we got on the table. Actually, this crow is balanced on a sword there, and it's neutral because it's horizontal, right? It's not up for truth and justice and all that kind of thing, and it's not down for lies and deception. It is neutral, and the Emperor's sat on it. But it speaks of strategy, and it speaks about getting in charge of your own stuff, right? It can indicate a person, but I feel like this is your energy, right? And I know that you've been struggling with things a little bit. That's come out periodically in your readings. I cannot remember the details of it all, but I do remember thinking that Cancer was having a hard time, right? This suggests that you've started to get on top of it. Now, this could be business related. Right? If you run your own business or something like that, you would expect to see the Emperor there, certainly. But it could be in a more general sense than that, because I feel like, well, for me personally, when the Emperor comes up, it's usually because it's kind of getting control of aspects of your life that feel like they've got away from you, right? Because the Emperor doesn't let anything get away from him. He controls everything, right? Because he's got a plan. And it feels like if you haven't had a plan, you've wanted to have a plan. And you've realised that you've needed to start controlling things a little bit more and being controlled a little bit less. All right. Which is followed up by these two cards here, which are the Knight of Wands and the Hanged Man. Now, this is the reason for the Emperor energy coming in for you right now, because Knight of Wands is quite a slapdash energy. You know, it's in and out. It's sometimes called the fuckboy card because it's a card of absolute non-commitment. But I don't feel like that's relevant here. Well, for you, I feel it's a scattered energy that you've been existing in for a little bit, right? You're kind of bouncing from one thing to another, reacting from to one thing or another. In a fairly exhaustive state, because there are only so many balls that you can keep up in the air at once if you're doing it in quite a slapdash manner, and that feels kind of the energy that I'm getting off this at the moment. And then we've got the Hanged Man, which is the card of Pisces, which could indicate the fact that it's Pisces season starting was when you decided to get on top of your stuff. But more than that, he talks about achieving wisdom by looking at the world from a different perspective. And if you have realised perhaps that your energy is very scattered and you are like literally being buffeted from one thing to another in quite a hasty way without actually getting anything done, the Emperor energy here would suggest that you kind of sat down with yourself and went, right, I need to get on top of all of these things, and you spent a bit of time in carefully strategizing how you move forwards, right? That's very healthy. Now, your current energy is the Seven of Cups, and I feel like this follows on very nicely, because I feel like as you've plugged the gaps, plugged your energy leaks, actually, is what it feels like. Things that were draining your time and resources and energy. So you have realised that there are actually a multitude of options that are open for you to progress forwards, right? They've got 7 cups here, and they've all got different things in them. I'm interested to see that there's a heart in one of these cups. And of course, the next main card that we have is the Three of Swords. It's the same heart, but with 3 swords through it. But the other cups have got things like, there's a laurel wreath in one, right? And we've got that symbolism doubled up here. And there's kind of like an old ruin and a flower. And I think it's a lotus, so we're talking about spiritual kind of spirituality, I would think, with that one. There's a snake for wisdom, and there's a crow skull. This crow is sat in the middle of them. Rather than having them be, in front of him and him just kind of being like, he sat directly in the middle of the cups. Like, all of these options are open to you now. And it's a sense of trying to pick which direction you wish to proceed in. Sometimes there's an illusory aspect to this card. Like sometimes there's the illusion of options where actually there aren't any. But I don't feel that's the case for you. I think that you have lots of things that are open to you. And the fact that the heart is here means I think that we're going to need to talk about it. I don't leap to romantic relationship because I don't think that there's necessarily anything here that suggests that that is the thing, but we're talking about emotional investment in something that you're putting your heart into. So that could be a relationship, and we've got a court pair on the table, or it could be, your work, it could be that, it could be family relationships, it could be friends, it could be any of these things, but certainly some notion of putting your heart into something is one of the options that's available to you. And although I said we've got a court pair on the table, which we do, I don't feel like these are people. I don't think that this is people. If it were, we've got Aquarius, Gemini or Libra here, strictly Aquarius because it's fixed air, right? In this. Doesn't have to be a man, could be a woman as well. But I feel like it's energy, right? Because for me, the King of Swords is the lower echo of the Emperor, right? And do you remember how I said I was immediately drawn to the sword that he was sat on there? Like, these are connected. It feels very much so. And what the King of Swords does is he thinks very logically about things. Like, it's an exceptionally intelligent energy. This king puts aside emotional considerations when making decisions about things, as you would expect an emperor to do, right? So the emperor has an empire to run, so the King of Swords also has a kingdom to run, right? And he's very consumed with notions of fairness and justice and things like that. He's going to do the right thing for the most amount of people. But coming out as it does underneath the Seven of Cups, I feel like this is you employing this energy to think logically about your next steps forwards, right? Even though there's an emotional component in here somewhere. And the Six of Wands says you're doing this to great success, right? Whatever it is that you're thinking about at the moment, you're using logic and reason to see your way forwards rather than being dragged by your heart or, any other part of your body potentially, since we've got the Knight of Wands on the table there, to make rational decisions about how you move forwards. And this still could be a work reading. This still could be, a platonic relationship reading. This still could be a general life reading. You've got to take it as it resonates to you. But the King of Swords, he thinks very swiftly. He thinks on his feet, even though he's depicted as sat on a throne. This can be, the energy of lawyers or doctors or things like that. It's people for whom emotion doesn't really come into what it is that they need to do. And if you've been buffeted about quite a lot, as you have been in the past, it's possible that there was an emotional aspect to that as well. And you've kind of decided that you need to think sensibly about how you progress. The Six of Wands says that that's the right move. It can also indicate a Leo, but it doesn't need to. You're expressing yourself very well, and experiencing a great clarity of thought at the moment. I'm going to pull some more cards because I'm slightly kind of rattling through this. There doesn't feel like there's a lot to talk about. Why is this King of Swords here, please? Whoa. So, okay, that's nice. Oh, I see now. Right, this is good. This gives this a much deeper deeper thing. We've got the Six of Cups and the Three of Wands, right? And this is nice. I like this because what this says to me is that the reason that you're contemplating all of these options that are open to you at the moment is because you are sat in an energy of really wanting to improve your life in some way, right? You've identified the fact that there are energy leaks. You've identified the fact that you're not really on top of what you're doing and you want to be. And now you're kind of sitting in the middle of all these potential directions that you could go, you know, kind of taking a bit of a sit rep, you know, like, yes, I want some emotion in my life, but I need it to be like this. Yes, you know, spiritualism, you know, spirituality, maybe that's a consideration, possibly, but you've got your house, you've got your home, you know, you've got your bills. All of these things are at play. And you are taking on the energy of the King of Swords to give it some proper thought, because what we've got here is a card of the past and a card of the future, right? And that's what I really like about this, because this can talk about soulmates, but I don't feel like this is a romantic reading. I feel it's far broader than that. I think this is you looking at your entire existence and going, some things need to give, some things need to be gone. I just need to decide sensibly, logically, rationally what's going and what's staying, right? To do that, you're having a little look at what's not worked backwards. You know, what's happened in the past to get you to where you are right now, and whether any of that is stuff that you want to carry forwards. And then we've got the Three of Wands, which is about expansion. It's about forward planning. It's about executing those decisions that you make in the Two of Wands, which is usually a crossroads, into the 3D, right? There's a sense of you really wanting to improve your life. But there's also a sense that you have been at the root of why it's been so frantic in the first place, why you have had so little control over it, if that makes sense. And I like that. It's a really strong position to take. I mean, the Emperor as an opening card is incredibly strong, definitely. But you've experienced this change of perspective that's helped you put things into perspective, because absolutely the King of Swords will do that too with the Hanged Man. Tell me more about the Six of Wands, please. There's absolutely a sense of not wanting to be at the whim, yeah, there you go, not wanting to be at the whim of other people or circumstance or situations, stuff like that. You know, you are taking responsibility for yourself and guiding your own direction forwards. And we've just had the Strength card come out there to clarify the Six of Wands. Six of Wands is a card of Leo, as is Strength. But just get one more card and then I'll keep talking. Oh, that one. Oh, lovely. This is really strong. So now we've got Strength and the Mage, or the Magician as it is in a standard deck. And I'm going to bring you back to the fact that we had the Wheel of Fortune at the bottom of this deck, but also the Magician, the Mage, and the Emperor, right? Things are going to change very soon. And it's almost like you've pulled this in. You've pulled in this good fortune. It's indicated by the Wheel of Fortune here, by kind of getting on top of your stuff in a way that you haven't before. And it's not been easy. Certainly what you've been experiencing, you know, up until recently was not easy. But it's been very character building. You know, I feel like what I feel quite strongly is there's a sense of you pushing out and working out where your limits are. Right? Because I think in some respects you sailed past your limits so hard that you didn't even notice that they'd gone, and there's a sense of you kind of coming to breaking point with it, right? So you stepped back, sat in the middle of everything, looked at it logically and said, okay, right, well, I cannot push myself with work that hard, because the knock-on effect that it has to me, to my family, to my general, you know, enjoyment of living is too much. So that's where that stops. And if that's, you know, you running your own business, that's knowing that at least one day a week, you've got to turn your fucking phone off, step away from the computer, right, and do something nice, do something for you, because you need to recharge, right? But we've got the Magician twice now, right? So you making these decisions to regain control of your life is enabling you to start manifesting some seriously good fortune towards you, right? That's awesome. It's really, really good. But Then we've got the Three of Swords. Now this is a card of heartbreak, right? And again, it doesn't need to be a romantic relationship. It just needs to be something that you've had some level of emotional investment in that has got speared in some way. And this is what's coming towards you in March. Now, there are lots of different ways of reading this, aside from the obvious. Like the obvious being that somebody's going to drift in and break your heart and it's all going to be terrible and stuff like that. But I don't get that feeling, not with what we've got preceding, you know, the emergence of this card right here. And particularly not since it's clarified by the Ace of Wands and the Queen of Swords. Interpreting it in the light of the cards that have come before, which is what you have to do with tarot, you know, everything is connected and all that kind of thing. This feels more like a reflection, a period of reflection. And it's interesting that we're in the retrograde, and that's what the retrograde energy is for, right? And we will continue to be in the retrograde. I think it's up until about the 19th of March or something like that. I'm not entirely sure of the date, but even then we still have a shadow period of roughly 2 weeks afterwards. So the entirety of March is spent in that retrograde energy, which brings back old people sometimes, old situations sometimes, old emotional responses to things sometimes, but also it allows us to kind of delve into ourselves, right, and try and work out what it is, you know, that we respond to sometimes. You know, when something happens, we absolutely flip our biscuits about it, but it kind of wasn't really that big a deal. But it kind of was, because what it was triggering off something old in you that you need to reflect on. You need to kind of understand your own drivers. I'm going to pull some more cards of that, because there are too many variables at the moment for me to do that. And I know it's a general reading, but I kind of like to nail it down to some level of specificity, at least. Otherwise it is just, you know, a series of vague statements, and I'm not about that life. I don't like that. Tell me about the Three of Swords. What else do I need to know about the Three of Swords? Tell me more about the Three of Swords. Ten of Wands. Now this is really interesting. Ooh, just got goosebumps. This is really interesting because at the bottom of the deck now we've got the Ten of Swords, right? And that's an ending. That's a painful ending, usually. It's feeling, well, I mean, look at the card. It's feeling like you've got 10 swords stabbed into your back, you know, kind of left for dead. But the cards that came up to clarify, again, the Three of Swords are the Eight of Pentacles and the Ten of Wands. Now, what immediately strikes me when I'm looking at these combination of cards together is, like I said, I had a very reflective feel of this. I feel like there's a certain revelation that you're going to have in the month of March. And the revelation is this. The revelation is that your heart is broken and has been broken, you know. And I don't think that that is going to surprise you, because somewhere there's an event that's caused that. Now, that could be a romantic relationship breaking down. Yes, obviously. But it could be any other kind of relationship too breaking down. You know, maybe you've fallen out with your cousin or your best friend, or, you know, either got fired from your job, something like that. Something that hurt you here, right? Getting fired is pretty humiliating. That's, everybody kind of struggles with that. Take it as it resonates to you. The revelation is that although you know what caused it, you didn't realise that you were still kind of holding that energy inside you, right? Because the Eight of Pentacles and the Ten of Wands. The Eight of Pentacles is about working, right? It's about working hard. It's about getting your nose down to the grindstone, and it's about grinding away at something until you fully master it, right? That's the flat interpretation for that card. The flat interpretation for the Ten of Wands is burden. It's a card of burden, right? Somebody picked up too many sticks, they were too heavy, they've had to sit down again. It feels like it's a revelation that your heart is still broken, because what you're going to come to understand is that you have been actually making your life harder than it needed to be. You've been working harder than you needed to be. All of these things, because you haven't dealt with this broken heart yet. Like, you've put your nose to the grindstone. You know, maybe you do work for yourself, in which case you've been taking on, you know, far more than you could possibly manage for a good life, you know, work-life balance. Or, you know, maybe you've thrown yourself into helping other people with something, you know, whatever it is. The revelation is that this energy that you've brought to yourself has been to try and cover this and to try and avoid dealing with this head on, right? It could even be a bereavement or something like that. You know, it is something that's broken your heart. And what you've done, instead of sitting with that and experiencing the grief and going through the grieving process, because it is, you know, there are clearly defined states that occur after a heartbreak or a bereavement or a grieving for anything of any point. What you've done is you've thrown yourself into literally anything else. And like, that too is kind of a fairly standard response. But you've done it so well, and you've done it almost to a fault. You kind of forgot that this was the don't you dare. Oh, this chap has been out with a strimmer and like all the big boys' toys all day. Like, he hasn't got that much land. I don't understand how he could have been making so much noise, and he's just fired up his chainsaw. So if we get lots of noise, I'm really, really sorry about that. I'll try and speak a little louder and drown it out. You've done it so well that you didn't realise that this was still operating underneath. You didn't realise that this was still a thing. And because now you've realised that you were working too hard, or, you know, you were scattered, all of your energy was all over the place, and because you're trying to get on top of it now, you have this little revelation that you were doing this all along to cover the fact that you had the broken heart underneath, right? And I think it's going to kind of sideswipe you. I think it's going to really knock you sideways when you do make this realisation, because like I said, you just fully embrace it. You've fully thrown yourself into it to the point that you did not even remember that this is why you were doing it. But the other cards that clarify underneath there, right, are the Ace of Wands and the Queen of Swords. Now, we'll throw the obvious out of the way. This can be, you know, a sexual relationship, a new sexual relationship of some sort. I feel like that's relevant here, right? This is the Wands suit. It talks about creativity. It talks about passion. It talks about imagination. It talks about being able to start something new, right? And be excited about it. And I feel like this is your energy moving forwards. Once you've dealt with this broken heart, and it's not even dealt with it, you know, because it takes a long time to heal a heart, but acknowledging the pain and acknowledging that it's there, and acknowledging that there's stuff there that you need to work through is the first step in the process to healing, right? And then you've got to... I actually hate him. Every fucking weekend, both days, without fail, he's out with his big boys' toys making loads and loads of noise. It's so inconsiderate, I just can't even. Anyway. this is a new start, right? Of passion and creativity. And this could just be the way that you're choosing to live your life in the future, right? Because what was before was hard and burdensome, right? But what comes after is exciting and actually makes your blood run hot, you know? So it could be a new project, it could be a new hobby, it could be something, you know? This combination of cards here speaks of a work-life balance that is completely wrong. It's completely awry. You know, working far too hard. This talks about starting something that gives you real pleasure, that gives you real enjoyment, right? And it seems like it's a rebalancing, you know, an understanding that you cannot work all the time. And if that means that you have to put down some of the work and you have to turn and you have to look at this broken heart that you've got and go, oh shit, well, it's there. Okay, how do I heal that? You heal that by bringing some fun, some lightness into your life. Yeah? And it's paired up with the Queen of Swords. Now, initially I said we've got a pair on the table, but these are energies. This is not people, I don't think. The Queen of Swords is about I think it's about seeing this for what it is, right? It's not getting mired down in the emotion of the situation before. It's about seeing the fact that it's there, acknowledging the fact that it's there, and coming up with, you know, something sensible, a sensible route through. Right, instead of hiding from it all the time. Because the queens are very open and they're very receptive. And what you've been doing is you've been piling loads of crap on top of something that needed to come out, right? That needed exposure to the light. And what is the Ace of Wands if not, you know, the light? It's fire. This is taking a far more sensible view of how you proceed in future than you have managed before, right? And you started that process all by yourself, and it's important to say that with this Emperor energy, with this King of Swords energy, right? With these things, knowing that something had to give, knowing that you needed to look at your life properly, right? And here you are, you're doing it right there. And the Queen of Swords, for me, is the lower echo of justice, and justice talks about balance, right? Really strongly about balance. This is balancing out the fact that you have to work, yes, and you probably have to work quite hard, but not as hard as you have been doing, with the fact that you've also got some healing to do off the back of something that hurt you, but also knowing that you need a bit of lightness in your life, you need a little bit of fun, you need a little bit of something that makes you excited, that doesn't make you feel like you just want to sit down and stare at the floor with all of this stuff on your back, you know? Which I think is really, really positive, actually, Cancer. And it shows a great deal of intellectual kind of maturity about the situation too, you know. But it's been... There's a real sense that there's a lesson in here for you, and in order for you to manifest your best possible future, get all of these things in balance, because until you do, the things that are unbalanced are acting effectively as stops, blocks that are difficult to work through, right? So I'm going to leave it there so that I can go across the road and you know, reenact some Texas Chainsaw Massacre on my neighbour. So, provided I'm not arrested, I will see you again in about a week, 10 days for the mid-months. Take care.